The ice world of Cryor was infamous across the galaxy as a planet where survival seemed impossible. Its surface was a relentless wasteland of snow, glaciers, and jagged ice formations that reached high into the atmosphere. For Tom Hawkins, a human survival expert and scout for the Galactic Explorers Guild, it was another in a long line of deadly assignments. He had been sent to chart unexplored regions of Cryor, but the monotony of the mission was broken when his scanner picked up an unexpected signal. Unusual thermal activity detected, the AI voice of his scanner chimed. Tom frowned, adjusting the scanner to narrow down the location. The heat signature didn't match the usual geological activity. It was faint, erratic, almost as if it were moving. "That's not natural," he muttered, zipping up his thermal suit and grabbing his gear. His snow rover hummed to life as he directed it toward the anomaly, the freezing winds battering against the vehicle's reinforced windows. After hours of tracking the signal, Tom spotted something through the swirling snow. At first, it seemed like a mirage, a dark figure barely distinguishable against the white landscape. As he got closer, the shape resolved into a humanoid form, walking unsteadily through the snowstorm. Tom stopped the rover and stepped out. The biting cold hitting him instantly, he approached cautiously, his hand on his holstered plasma pistol. "Hey, you need help?" he shouted over the howling wind. The figure turned toward him, revealing a woman with pale, shimmering skin and hair that caught the faint light like threads of silver. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, and her movements were sluggish, as though exhaustion was overtaking her. She said something in a language he didn't understand, her voice weak but musical. Tom raised his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "It's okay. I'm here to help," he said, trying to sound reassuring. The woman swayed, her knees buckling as she collapsed into the snow. Tom rushed forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. Her skin was freezing and her breaths were shallow. Whatever, or whoever, she was, she wouldn't last long in the unforgiving cold. "You're coming with me," Tom muttered, hoisting her into his arms and carrying her back to the rover. He laid her carefully in the heated cabin, her alien features catching the warm glow of the interior lights. As the rover sped back toward his temporary base, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled onto something far beyond his usual line of work. Tom's outpost was a compact but sturdy shelter designed for extreme conditions. It was nestled within a crevice in a massive glacier, shielded from Cryor's worst storms. The rover pulled into the garage bay, and Tom wasted no time getting the mysterious woman inside. She stirred slightly as he placed her on the medical cot, her glowing eyes fluttering open for a brief moment. "Safe?" she murmured in that unfamiliar language before slipping back into unconsciousness. Tom activated his medical scanner, running it over her body. The readings were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her internal temperature was alarmingly low by human standards, but her vitals were stable. She wasn't human, of that he was certain. Her glowing tattoos, intricate and faintly pulsing, appeared to be some kind of bioluminescent marking, possibly tied to her species' physiology. "Who are you?" he muttered, studying her face. She looked delicate, almost fragile, but there was something resilient in her features, a quiet strength that seemed to defy her current state. As he worked to stabilize her, his comm system pinged with an alert. He ignored it at first, focusing on her recovery, but the ping grew more insistent. Finally, he checked the message. It was from the Galactic Explorers Guild, a report of increased activity in Cryor's orbit. Ships of unknown origin had been detected, and local authorities were advised to exercise caution. Tom frowned. This can't be a coincidence. The woman stirred again, her glowing eyes opening fully this time. She looked at him, disoriented but alert. "Where am I?" she asked, her words thick with an accent but intelligible. "You're on Cryor," Tom said, pulling a chair closer to her cot. "I found you out in the snow. Who are you? What are you doing here?" Her gaze flickered with hesitation before she replied. "My name is Alara. I didn't mean to come here. I was escaping." "Escaping what?" Tom asked, his instincts bristling at the vagueness. Her expression darkened, and she sat up slightly, clutching the blanket around her. "I can't tell you everything, not yet. But if you found me, then they might too." "Who's they?" Tom pressed, but Alara shook her head, refusing to answer. Tom exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. You don't have to tell me everything right now, but if someone's after you, I need to know what we're dealing with. Alara hesitated, then nodded slightly. I will tell you, just not yet. Tom stood, his jaw tightening. He didn't like being kept in the dark, but she was clearly scared, and whatever she was running from sounded serious. Fine. Get some rest. We'll figure this out in the morning. As he left her to sleep, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that saving her had pulled him into something far more dangerous than he was prepared for. And as the storm outside intensified, he knew it was only a matter of time before the trouble she feared came knocking. The following morning, the storm outside had subsided, leaving a pale blue sky over the endless expanse of Cryor's frozen landscape. Inside the outpost, Tom sat at the small table, sipping a cup of steaming synth coffee while his thoughts churned. Alara was awake now, seated across from him. She clutched the thermal blanket tightly around her shoulders, her glowing eyes fixed on the table, as if avoiding his gaze. Tom broke the silence. You promised you'd tell me what's going on. I saved your life, and if someone's coming for you, I need to know who and why. Alara sighed, the glow of her tattoos dimming as she seemed to weigh her words. Finally, she looked up, her expression a mix of defiance and vulnerability. I am not just anyone, she began slowly, her galactic calm halting but clear. My people, they see me as a problem, a disgrace. Tom raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I do not follow rules. I question the elders, challenge the way things are done. Her voice grew firmer, and a hint of pride crept in. I wanted change for my people. They wanted obedience. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying her. So they exiled you? She hesitated before nodding. Yes, but not just exile. My family, they hoped Cryor would kill me, that no one would survive this place. Tom's brow furrowed. Your family? Alara's lips pressed into a thin line before she finally said, My family leads my people. was a daughter of the royal house. Tom stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. You're a princess? She flinched slightly at the term, shaking her head. Not anymore. I am nothing to them. Tom let out a low whistle. Well, that explains why someone might be looking for you. Alara's gaze turned sharp. I don't want their help. I don't want to go back. Then what do you want? Tom asked, leaning forward. To be free, she said, her voice trembling with conviction. To live my own life, away from their rules and their judgment. Tom nodded slowly, respecting the fire behind her words. Fair enough. But if they went through all the trouble to send you here, they're not going to let you just disappear. If I'm going to help you, I need to know what we're up against. Alara hesitated, then gave him a faint nod. There are others. My father sent hunters, enforcers. They are here. If they find me, they will not stop until I am returned. Or dead. Tom's stomach nodded at her words, but he kept his tone calm. All right. Then we make sure they don't find you. Later that day, while Tom worked on the outpost's communication array, an alert pinged from his scanner. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Multiple heat signatures moving through the frozen tundra, converging on their location. Tom cursed under his breath and rushed inside, where Alara was examining the outpost's limited database. We've got company, he said, pulling up the scanner data on a nearby console. Looks like a search party. 4, maybe 5 of them. Alara's face paled, her tattoos flaring brighter for a moment before dimming. They're here. Can you fight? Tom asked, already strapping on his gear. She nodded. Yes, but they will not stop. They will not negotiate. Good thing I'm not big on talking either, Tom said, tossing her a plasma pistol from his weapon cache. You'll need this. Alara caught the weapon, examining it with practiced efficiency. You think we can win? Tom smirked. Winning's overrated. Surviving is what matters. The first attack came just as night fell. The hunters approached with stealth, their heat signatures disappearing as they activated cloaking devices. Tom had anticipated this and set up motion sensors around the outpost. The moment the first intruder tripped one, an automated turret roared to life, forcing the hunter into the open. Alara took the first shot, her plasma bolt striking the hunter squarely in the chest. The cloaking field flickered and failed as the body hit the snow. Nice shot, Tom said, impressed. You weren't kidding about knowing how to fight. I learned to survive, she replied, her voice steady. The remaining hunters retaliated with precision, firing energy blasts that rocked the outpost's shields. Tom and Alara worked in sync, covering each other as they moved between defensive positions. Tom used his knowledge of the terrain to lead one of the hunters into a trap, while Alara disarmed another with a calculated shot that disabled their weapon. "They're regrouping," Tom called out as he reloaded. "They're going to hit us harder." "We need to end this now," Alara said, her glowing eyes narrowing. "Draw them out. I'll take care of the rest." "What's the plan?" Tom asked, skeptical but willing to listen. Alara's tattoos began to glow brighter, her body radiating a faint heat. "Trust me." Reluctantly, Tom lured the remaining hunters into the open, firing precise shots to keep them on edge. As they advanced, Alara stepped into view. Her tattoos flared brilliantly, and with a single motion she released a wave of energy that cascaded across the battlefield. The hunters' weapons shorted out, their cloaking devices sparking as they failed. The last of the hunters dropped to their knees, incapacitated but alive. Alara lowered her hand, her breathing heavy. "It's done." Tom stared at her, stunned. "Remind me not to get on your bad side." Alara managed a faint smile. "You've seen nothing yet." As they secured the area, Tom realized that their fight was far from over. The hunters were only the beginning, and the storm brewing on Cryor was about to get much worse. The aftermath of the skirmish left the outpost in eerie silence. The incapacitated hunters lay bound in the snow outside, their weapons disarmed and their cloaking devices fried. Tom paced inside the control room, his mind racing as he worked to fortify their defenses further. Alara leaned against the wall, her glowing tattoos dimming as she recovered from her energy outburst. "They'll send more," she said, her voice flat but certain. "My uncle doesn't tolerate failure." Tom glanced at her. "Your uncle sent these guys?" She nodded, her expression grim. "He is ruthless. He sees me as a threat to his rule. Cryor was supposed to be the end of me, but now he knows I've survived. He won't stop until I'm captured, or dead." Tom frowned, leaning over the console as he reviewed the outpost's scanner logs. "If he's tracking you, we need to figure out how. There's no way they found you here by accident." Alara stepped closer, her glowing eyes narrowing as she stared at the console. "They might have implanted a tracer. My people use subdermal tracking nodes on prisoners and exiles." "Then let's find it," Tom said, grabbing his medical scanner. Alara hesitated, but nodded. "Do it quickly. If it's active, it'll draw more of them." Tom ran the scanner along her arms, shoulders, and neck, watching for any anomalies. It wasn't until he reached her lower back that the device pinged. "Found it," he muttered. The tracer was embedded near her spine, a tiny node barely detectable. "Can you remove it?" she asked, her tone steady despite the gravity of the situation. Tom nodded. "I'll have to be careful, but yeah, hold still." The procedure was tense but quick. Using a surgical tool from his medkit, Tom carefully extracted the tracer, a tiny metallic capsule that emitted a faint, rhythmic pulse. He dropped it into a containment pod, sealing it off from external signals. "That should buy us some time," he said, wiping his hands. "But they'll still know you're here." Alara examined the pod, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Then we need to leave. If we stay, this outpost will become our grave." Tom glanced around at the battered structure, its walls barely holding against the frigid winds. She was right. This place couldn't protect them anymore. "There's an old research station about 50 clicks from here," he said. "If we can get there, we might be able to signal for help." Alara tilted her head. "Do you trust anyone to come?" Tom smirked. "I don't trust anyone, but I've got a few favors I can call in." The journey to the research station was grueling. Cryor's icy winds cut through even the thickest thermal gear, and the terrain was treacherous, jagged ice formations and hidden crevasses that could swallow a person whole. Tom and Alara moved carefully, their survival instincts honed by necessity. Why would your uncle go to such lengths to get rid of you?" Tom asked as they navigated a narrow ridge. "You said you're a threat, but what makes him so afraid?" Alara's gaze remained fixed ahead, her expression unreadable. "Because I represent change. My people follow traditions that keep power in the hands of the few. I challenged those traditions. I spoke for the commoners, for reforms that would benefit everyone." Tom nodded, his respect for her growing. "So you're a revolutionary." She gave a wry smile. "A failed one. My uncle painted me as a danger to stability. He used fear to justify my exile." "Well," Tom said, adjusting his grip on his rifle, "seems to me you're still in the fight. And you've got at least one ally now. Alara glanced at him, her glowing eyes softening. You didn't have to help me. Why did you? Tom hesitated, then shrugged. I've spent a lot of time running from things. I know what it feels like to be cornered. Besides, someone has to stand up to the bullies. Her smile grew faintly warmer. Thank you. Hours into their trek, the weather took a turn. A massive storm rolled in, obscuring their path with blinding snow and howling winds. Tom checked his navigation device, but the readings were distorted by the storm's electromagnetic interference. We need to find shelter, he shouted over the wind. Alara nodded, her voice barely audible. There's a crevice ahead. I can feel it. Tom followed her lead, and sure enough, they found a narrow fissure in the ice that offered some protection from the storm. They set up a small camp inside, activating a portable heater to stave off the cold. As they huddled near the heater, Tom studied Alara. You said you wanted to be free. What does that look like for you? She thought for a moment, her glowing eyes reflecting the flickering light. It looks like a world where I don't have to fight just to exist, where I can choose my own path without fear of being hunted. Tom nodded. Sounds like a good world. Let's make it happen. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the cold and danger seemed to fade. You're not like anyone I've met, she said softly. Neither are you, he replied with a faint smile. The storm raged outside, but within their small sanctuary, a sense of purpose and camaraderie grew. Together, they prepared for the final leg of their journey, knowing the real battle was yet to come. The storm passed by morning, leaving behind a dazzling but treacherous landscape of ice and fresh snow. Tom and Alara resumed their journey, pushing forward with renewed determination. The research station was close now, but the tension between them was palpable. They both knew the hunters wouldn't give up so easily. Tom's scanner pinged as they approached a narrow ice canyon. He froze, raising a hand to stop Alara. Something's not right, he muttered, adjusting the scanner. Multiple heat signatures flickered on the display, scattered along the canyon walls. They're here? Alara whispered, her glowing eyes narrowing. They're waiting for us. Tom glanced at her, his mind racing. This canyon's a death trap. If we try to cross, they'll have the high ground. Alara scanned the cliffs, her glowing tattoos flaring faintly as she concentrated. There's a path over the ridge to the east. It'll take longer, but we can avoid the canyon. Tom shook his head. If we backtrack, they'll know we've spotted them. They'll just reposition and cut us off again. Then what's your plan? She asked, her tone sharp. He smirked, a glint of mischief in his eyes. We spring the trap, but on our terms. Tom and Alara worked quickly, planting explosives along the icy walls of the canyon. Using the terrain to their advantage, they set up a diversion that would force the hunters to reveal themselves. As they prepared, Alara couldn't help but glance at Tom. His calm under pressure, his resourcefulness, it was unlike anyone she'd ever known. You're too good at this, she said, her voice tinged with both admiration and curiosity. Years of practice, Tom replied, securing the last charge. When you've been hunted as often as I have, you learn a few tricks. Alara's expression softened. Thank you for staying. You could have walked away. Tom glanced at her, his smirk fading into something more genuine. What kind of person would I be if I did? The ambush played out exactly as Tom predicted. The hunters descended into the canyon, their cloaking devices shimmering as they moved into position. Tom triggered the first charge, collapsing a section of the canyon wall and cutting off their escape route. Alara fired from her perch, her shots precise and deadly. The hunters returned fire, but Tom's traps kept them disoriented, forcing them into the open. When the dust settled, only one hunter remained, pinned beneath a fallen ice boulder. Tom approached cautiously, his weapon trained on the figure. You've got one chance to walk away. Tell your boss she's not coming back. The hunter sneered, his voice distorted by his helmet. You think this ends with me? The Visorian Empire doesn't forget. Tom didn't flinch. Neither do I. He fired a single shot, disabling the hunter's remaining equipment. Let's go, he said to Alara, who joined him as they resumed their journey. By the time they reached the research station, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the icy plains. The structure was ancient but intact, its walls half buried in snow. Alara approached cautiously, her glowing tattoos illuminating the dark entrance. Looks abandoned, Tom said, scanning the perimeter. But we shouldn't assume it's safe. Inside, the station was a labyrinth of frozen corridors and dormant machinery. Tom worked quickly to power up the main systems, while Alara explored the facility, her curiosity piqued by the remnants of human technology. This place was studying the planet's electromagnetic anomalies, Tom explained, connecting his portable comm unit to the station's uplink. If I can get this thing online, we can send a signal. To who? Alara asked, her tone wary. An old contact of mine, Tom replied. He's got the resources to get us off this rock, and maybe even keep you hidden. Alara hesitated, her gaze lingering on him. And you trust him? Tom smirked. About as far as I can throw him, but he owes me. As Tom worked, Alara found a chamber filled with glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The energy emanating from them resonated with her as if they were alive. She placed a hand on one, and a faint hum filled the air. Tom, she called, her voice echoing through the corridor. He joined her, his eyes widening at the sight. What the hell is that? These are ancient, Alara said, her voice reverent. A relic of my people. They must have been here long before the station was built. Tom frowned. Can we use them? Alara closed her eyes, her tattoos flaring brighter as she concentrated. The crystals pulsed in response, their energy surging through the station's systems. Lights flickered on, and a low hum filled the air as the facility came to life. You just turned this place into a beacon, Tom said, his voice laced with both awe and worry. Alara opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. Let them come, we're ready. With the station fully operational, Tom sent his signal, encrypting it with layers of code to prevent interception. The response was almost immediate, a garbled voice crackling through the comms. Hawkins, is that you? It's me, Tom replied. I need an evac. Urgent. The voice hesitated. You're on Cryor? That place is a death sentence. Tell me something I don't know, Tom said. I've got someone with me. Priority 1. Can you make it happen? There was a long pause before the reply came. We're on our way. Sit tight. Tom turned to Alara, who stood silently by the glowing crystals. Help's coming, he said. But so is trouble. We'll need to hold out until they get here. Alara nodded, her glowing eyes fierce. Then let's make our stand. As the station hummed with energy, the two of them prepared for the inevitable onslaught, knowing the fight ahead would test them like never before. Together, they would face whatever came, determined to survive and to rewrite their fates. The low hum of the station's activated systems reverberated through the corridors, mingling with the rising tension in the air. Tom and Alara worked quickly, fortifying the research station against the imminent attack. The glow of the ancient crystals bathed the space in an otherworldly light, a stark contrast to the grim reality they faced. Tom adjusted a turret he had hastily assembled using salvaged station parts. We've got maybe an hour before your uncle's people show up, he said, tightening a bolt. If they come in force, we'll be overwhelmed. Alara stood near the central console, her glowing tattoos casting faint patterns on the walls. We've already faced them and won. We'll do it again. Tom shot her a glance, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. Confidence is great. Backup would be better. The comm unit crackled, and a voice came through. Hawkins, this is Black Talon, inbound to your location, ETA 20 minutes. Tom exhaled a sigh of relief. That's our ride. We just need to hold out until then. The first wave hit moments later. The sound of energy blasts echoed through the station as the hunters breached the outer perimeter. Alara moved with precision, her plasma rifle firing bursts of light that illuminated the darkened corridors. Tom covered her, taking out enemies with practiced efficiency, his years of combat experience showing in every move. They're testing our defenses, Tom muttered, ducking behind a barricade as a volley of blasts struck their cover. They won't break through, Alara said, her voice steady. But the next wave was larger, more coordinated. Hunters equipped with advanced shielding pushed into the station, forcing Tom and Alara to retreat toward the central chamber where the crystals pulsed with energy. In the heart of the station, Alara turned to Tom. The crystals hold power beyond anything they understand. If we can amplify their energy... Tom cut her off. And what? Turn this place into a bomb? No, she said, her eyes glowing brighter. Into a beacon, a surge strong enough to disable their tech. Tom hesitated, scanning her face. Can you control it? I have to, she said firmly. As the enemy forces closed in, Alara approached the crystals, placing her hands on their surface. The glow of her tattoos intensified, merging with the crystal's light. The station trembled as energy surged through its systems, a wave of brilliance radiating outward. The hunters, caught in the pulse, faltered. Their weapons and cloaking devices shorted out, leaving them exposed. Tom didn't hesitate, taking advantage of the chaos to drive them back. The comm unit crackled again. "Hawkins, we're landing now. Get to the evac point." "Alara," Tom called. "We need to go." She stepped back from the crystals, her breathing labored, but her determination unwavering. "Let's finish this." The Black Talon shuttle hovered just outside the station, its engines roaring as the pilot expertly avoided enemy fire. Tom and Alara sprinted through the snow, their weapons blazing as they cut down the remaining hunters. As they reached the shuttle, Tom turned to cover Alara's retreat. She hesitated, glancing back at the station. "If they regain control of the crystals, they'll come after us again." Tom gritted his teeth, understanding her unspoken resolve. "We destroy it." Alara nodded, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "Do it." Tom fired a well-aimed shot at the containment pod holding the tracer they'd removed earlier. The resulting explosion triggered a chain reaction, and the crystals erupted in a brilliant cascade of energy, consuming the station in a blinding flash. The shockwave propelled the shuttle forward, but its shields held. From the safety of the cockpit, Tom and Alara watched as the research station, and the threat it represented, disappeared into the icy wasteland. Hours later, aboard the Black Talon, Tom sat in the quiet of the crew quarters, nursing a cup of synth coffee. Alara joined him, her expression unreadable as she sat across from him. "It's over," Tom said softly. "For now," she replied, "but my uncle won't stop." Tom leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Then we don't stop either." Alara studied him, her glowing eyes softening. "You don't have to stay involved, Tom. You've already done more than anyone ever has." Tom smirked. "And miss out on the chance to annoy your uncle even more? Not a chance." Her laughter was genuine, a sound that cut through the heaviness of their ordeal. "You're insufferable." "And you're stuck with me," Tom said, raising his cup in a mock toast. Alara leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Then let's make this fight count, together." As the Black Talon disappeared into hyperspace, their resolve was clear. They were two outcasts united by circumstance, ready to challenge the forces that sought to oppress them. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side, determined to forge their own path in the vastness of the galaxy.